Admiral Zexathara stood on the observation deck of the Concordat flagship, watching the stars through the massive viewing port. The stars looked the same as they had for the past 30,000 years. Peaceful, organized, safe. She belonged to the Velkari race, tall beings with silver skin and forearms who had helped create the great peace that now ruled the galaxy. Her people were proud of what they had built alongside the other ancient races. No wars, no conflict, no chaos. The bridge behind her hummed quietly with the sounds of routine operations. Her crew moved slowly, checking systems that never broke down, monitoring space lanes where nothing dangerous ever happened. This was how it had been for longer than anyone could remember. Admiral called her communications officer, a short, furry creature from the Pix-Nar system. We are receiving the daily reports from all sectors. Any problems? Zexathara asked, though she already knew the answer. No, Admiral. All systems report normal activity. Trade routes are clear. No conflicts to resolve. She nodded and turned back to the stars. This was good, she told herself. This was what they had worked so hard to achieve. The galaxy was finally at peace. But sometimes, in quiet moments like this, she wondered if something was missing. The Concordat had formed after the great wars that nearly destroyed everything. Those terrible times when entire star systems burned and whole races disappeared overnight. The old stories spoke of weapons that could crack planets in half and ships that moved faster than thought. Itself, most frightening of all were the stories about humans. The histories said humans were the worst of all the warrior races. They fought everyone, including themselves. They built weapons that scared even the other warlike species. When they finally vanished around the year 20,000, most of the galaxy had celebrated. Good riddance, the old leaders had said. Now we can finally have peace, and they had been right. The wars ended soon after humanity disappeared. The surviving races came together and formed the Concordat. They wrote careful laws about everything, where each race could live, what weapons they could build, how fast their ships could travel, how to solve problems without fighting. It worked perfectly. Zexathara walked to her command chair and sat down. Around her, the bridge crew continued their quiet work. Everything was so calm and ordered. Their ship, the Harmony's Dawn, was beautiful to look at but not very fast. It didn't need to be fast. There was nowhere urgent to go. The ship's designer had focused on making it comfortable rather than powerful. The weapons were mostly ceremonial, pretty energy beams that could disable other ships but not destroy them. The idea of actually killing someone in battle was considered barbaric now. Admiral, her science officer spoke up. This one was from the crystal-like shard race. I have been thinking about the old human ruins we passed last month. What about them? Zexathara asked. The technology in those ruins is still so advanced. After 30,000 years, we still cannot understand how some of their machines worked. That is because they were built for war, the Admiral replied, repeating what everyone said about human technology. Violence always seems more impressive than peace. But look what it got them. They destroyed themselves. The science officer made a clicking sound that meant agreement among his people. But Zexathara noticed he looked thoughtful, as if he wanted to say more. This was the official story everyone believed. Humans had been so violent, so focused on fighting that they had eventually wiped themselves out. It was a perfect example of why the Concordat's peaceful ways were superior. The evidence seemed clear enough. Human worlds were empty. Their great cities were ruins. Their massive fleets had simply vanished. No one had seen a living human in 30,000 years. Set course for the Nexus station, Zexathara ordered. We have a Concordat meeting tomorrow. Yes, Admiral, replied her navigator, a tall, thin being from the Whisper race. Travel time will be 18 hours at our current speed. 18 hours to cross 2 star systems. Their ancestors would have laughed at such slow travel. But speed was dangerous. Speed led to accidents. Speed led to conflict when 2 fast ships met unexpectedly. Better to travel slowly and safely. The Harmony's Dawn turned gracefully and entered hyperspace at the legal maximum speed. Around them, space folded in the gentle, controlled way that Concordat ships traveled. No violent tears in reality. No dangerous energy bursts. Everything smooth and predictable. As they flew through hyperspace, Zexathara thought about the meeting tomorrow. It would be like all the others. Representatives from dozens of races would gather to discuss minor trade disputes and small problems. They would follow the ancient protocols, speak politely to each other, and solve everything through careful negotiation. It was better than war. Much better. But still, sometimes she wondered what her ancestors had felt when they flew into battle, when they faced unknown dangers, when they pushed their ships to the breaking point and beyond. She shook her head. These were dangerous thoughts. The old ways had nearly destroyed everything. The Concordat had saved the galaxy from chaos and death. "Admiral," her communications officer called. "I am receiving some strange reports from the Outer Rim territories." "What kind of reports?" "Ships are reporting unusual energy readings near the old human systems. Very faint, but the sensors keep detecting something." Zexathara frowned. The old human systems were forbidden territory, declared off-limits after their civilization fell. Nothing was supposed to be there except empty worlds and ancient ruins. Are the readings coming from the ruins? That is the strange part, Admiral. The energy readings do not match anything in our databases. They do not look like human technology, at least not the human technology we know about. Probably just solar storms or cosmic radiation, Zexathara said. Those old systems have not been properly maintained in 30,000 years. All kinds of strange things can happen. Yes, Admiral, that must be it. But even as she said it, Zexathara felt a small chill run down her spine. Something about those reports bothered her. The Outer Rim territories were far from everything, monitored only by automated sensors. If something was really happening out there, it might be a long time before anyone noticed. She dismissed the thought. The galaxy was safe. The Concordat made sure of that. Whatever was causing those energy readings, it was probably nothing important. After all, what could possibly threaten the peace they had built? The Harmony's Dawn continued its slow, steady journey toward Nexus Station, carrying its crew deeper into Concordat space, away from the forbidden systems where ancient ruins slept among the stars. Behind them, in the darkness of the Outer Rim, something vast and patient continued to watch and wait. 3 weeks after Admiral Zexathara's meeting at Nexus Station, the galaxy changed forever. It started with Dr. Miptal, a young scientist from the water world of Aquos Prime. She was working the night shift at the Deep Space Monitoring Array, a massive collection of sensors that watched the empty spaces between star systems. Most nights nothing happened. Space was quiet and predictable, but tonight was different. "That cannot be right," Miptal whispered, staring at her screens. The gravitational sensors were showing something impossible. Multiple massive objects were approaching the Kepler system from outside the galaxy itself. She ran the readings through the computer 3 times. Each time the answer was the same. 17 objects, each one larger than a Concordat battleship, were moving through space at speeds that should have been impossible. "Senior Scientist Vexel," she called to her supervisor. "You need to see this." Vexel was an old wise member of the Shard race with crystal formations that glowed softly in the darkness. He had worked at the array for over 200 years and had never seen anything unusual. "What is it, young one?" he asked, floating over to her station. "Objects approaching the Kepler system. Very large objects moving very fast." Vexel looked at the readings and went completely still. Among the Shard race, this meant extreme shock. "This must be an equipment error," he said finally. "These readings show faster than light travel without hyperspace entry." "That is impossible." "I thought so too," Miptal replied. "But I have checked everything. The sensors are working perfectly." Before Vexel could respond, alarms began ringing throughout the array. Other sensor stations across the galaxy were detecting the same impossible readings. Something was definitely approaching, and it was big. "Send an emergency message to all Concordat fleets," Vexel ordered. "Unknown objects entering galaxy space. All ships to maintain safe distance and observe only." The message flashed across the galaxy at the speed of light, reaching Admiral Zexathara as her ship patrolled near the Kepler system. When she read it, she felt that same chill she had experienced weeks earlier. "Navigator, change course for the Kepler system. Maximum legal speed. Admiral, that will take us 6 hours to reach the outer edge of the system. Then we will be 6 hours late to see whatever is coming," she replied grimly, but they were not the only ones watching. Every major species in the galaxy had sensors pointing toward Kepler. The Velkari, the Pixnar, the Shards, the Whispers, and dozens of others all waited to see what was approaching their peaceful galaxy. They did not have to wait long. At exactly 1427 Galactic Standard Time, 17 objects dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler system, but they did not emerge from hyperspace the way every other ship in the galaxy traveled. Instead, reality seemed to fold around them and they simply appeared. The ships were enormous. The smallest was 3 times larger than the biggest Concordat battleship. The largest was the size of a small moon. But size was not the most shocking thing about them. The ships were alive. They did not look like metal constructions built in shipyards. They looked like they had grown, like vast organisms that had been shaped and bred for space travel. Their hulls curved and flowed like muscle and bone. Strange lights pulsed along their surfaces like blood vessels carrying energy instead of blood. And they were beautiful. Even as the Concordat fleets watched in fear and amazement, they had to admit that these ships were the most beautiful things they had ever seen. "Admiral," Zexathara's communications officer called out in a shaking voice, "We are receiving a transmission from the unknown fleet. Put it through." The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a face that made everyone on the bridge take a step backward. It was human, but not like the humans from the old historical records. This human looked the same but different. His eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire universes. When he smiled, it was gentle but also terrifying in its confidence. "Greetings," the human said, speaking in perfect galactic common language. "I am Captain Marcus Chen of the Terra Exodus fleet. We have been away for a long time, but now we have returned." Admiral Zexathara found her voice first. You are human, but humans are extinct. Your species vanished 30,000 years ago." The human's smile widened slightly. "Vanished?" "No, Admiral Zexathara of the Velkari 3rd Fleet. We did not vanish. We simply went elsewhere for a while." The fact that he knew her name and ship assignment sent chills through the entire bridge crew. "How could he know such things? Where have you been?" she asked. "Growing up," Captain Chen replied. "Learning. Becoming what we needed to become. We have been watching the galaxy from, let us call them other places. We have seen what you have built here. Very peaceful, very orderly, very safe." Something in the way he said the word safe made it sound like an insult. "The Concordat has brought 30,000 years of peace to the galaxy," Zexathara said proudly. "No wars, no conflict, no destruction." "Yes," the human agreed. "We have been watching. You have built a very impressive nursery." Before Zexathara could ask what he meant, more human ships began appearing throughout the galaxy, not just near Kepler but everywhere. Near every major world, every important station, every Concordat fleet. They appeared without warning, without traveling through hyperspace, without any of the normal signs that ships were approaching. One moment there was empty space, the next moment there was a human vessel. Panic began to spread across the galaxy. Concordat fleets tried to respond, but their ships were so much slower than the human vessels. By the time they could react, the humans were already wherever they wanted to be. "How are you doing this?" Zexathara demanded. "How are your ships moving without hyperspace?" "Hyperspace?" Captain Chen looked genuinely puzzled. "You are still using hyperspace? After 30,000 years, you have not discovered anything better?" "Better? There is nothing better than hyperspace for faster-than-light travel." The human shook his head sadly. "Dear Admiral, hyperspace is like crawling when you could be flying. We stopped using it 25,000 years ago. We found other ways to move." On her sensors, Zexathara could see that the human ship near her fleet was not just sitting in space. It was doing something to space itself, bending and twisting it in ways that made no sense. "What do you want?" she asked. "Want?" Captain Chen considered the question. "We want to come home, Admiral. We want to see what our galaxy has become while we were away, and we want to correct some misunderstandings." "What misunderstandings?" The human's expression became serious. "The misunderstanding that you are safe. The misunderstanding that peace means hiding from challenges. The misunderstanding that progress means moving slowly and carefully." His image flickered and changed, showing not just his face but views of his ship's interior. The technology visible there was beyond anything in the Concordat's understanding. Machines that seemed to think, walls that flowed like water, but held the strength of metal, crew members who moved through the air without gravity devices. "We have much to discuss," Captain Chen said, "but first we need to speak with your leaders. All of them. At once. That will take weeks to arrange. The Concordat Council meets only once per year." The human's smile returned. "Admiral, we have waited 30,000 years. But we are done waiting now. Tell your leaders they have 24 hours to gather at Nexus Station. All of them. And if they refuse, they will not refuse," Captain Chen said with absolute certainty. Because in 24 hours we are going to show them what the galaxy really looks like. And after that everything changes. The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Zexathara staring at a blank screen while the impossible ship waited in space nearby, bending reality around itself like it was the most natural thing in the universe. 24 hours later, every leader in the Concordat had somehow made it to Nexus Station. Not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. The human ships had made that very clear. High Counselor Therak of the Shard race stood in the Great Assembly Hall, surrounded by hundreds of other leaders, Velkari admirals, Pixnar trademasters, Whisper diplomats, and dozens of other species all waited nervously. Outside the station, 17 human ships hung in space like sleeping giants. They had not threatened anyone directly, but their presence was threat enough. Any ship that tried to leave the system simply found itself turned around and heading back to Nexus Station. The humans were not using weapons or force. They were simply making it impossible to go anywhere else. "This is an outrage," muttered Ambassador Klexip from the warrior Theran race. "No one has the right to force a Concordat meeting." "Tell that to them," replied Admiral Zexathara, pointing at the main display screen that showed the human fleet. "Their ships make our fastest vessels look like toys." Before anyone could respond, the lights in the assembly hall dimmed. The massive display screens around the room flickered to life, showing the face of Captain Chen. But this time he was not alone. Behind him stood other humans, and behind them was something that made every being in the hall gasp in shock. It was space itself, but not space as they knew it. Instead of the familiar black void with distant stars, they could see layers upon layers of reality. Dimensions folded into each other like pages in a book. Entire universes nested inside other universes. And moving through all of it were ships and structures that defied every law of physics. "Leaders of the Concordat," Captain Chen began, his voice carrying easily through the hall. "Thank you for coming. We know this meeting was not voluntary, but what we have to show you could not wait for your normal procedures." High Counselor Therak stepped forward, his crystal body glowing with authority. "Captain Chen, the Concordat demands to know where humanity has been for 30,000 years and why you have returned now." "An excellent question," Chen replied. "We have been growing up." The screen changed, showing images that made the assembled leaders lean forward in amazement and fear. They saw human cities that floated between dimensions, ships that existed in multiple realities at the same time, humans who seemed to be made of living energy, walking alongside others who looked perfectly normal. "When the Great Wars threatened to destroy everything," Chen continued, "most species chose to fight until exhaustion, then divide the galaxy between the survivors. Humanity chose differently. We chose to leave." "Leave?" Admiral Zexathara called out. "You mean you ran away?" Chen's expression became sad. "We prefer to think of it as strategic withdrawal. The galaxy was tearing itself apart over resources, territory, and ideology. Every species was trying to prove they were the strongest, the smartest, the most deserving of dominance. We realized that fighting over a limited galaxy was pointless when infinite possibilities existed, just beyond your perception." The images on the screen shifted again, showing the moment of humanity's departure, massive fleets of human ships gathering at the edge of known space. But instead of traveling to distant stars, they simply stepped sideways into realities that existed parallel to normal space. "We spent the first 1,000 years learning to survive in dimensional space," Chen explained. "The next 10,000 years learning to thrive there. The following 10,000 years exploring realities that most species never dreamed existed." "And the last 10,000 years?" asked Counselor Therak. "Watching you." The words sent a chill through the assembly hall. Every leader suddenly felt exposed, as if they had been performing on a stage without knowing there was an audience. "You have been watching us?" Ambassador Klexip demanded. "For 10,000 years?" "From the moment you formed the Concordat," Chen confirmed. "We have been observing your progress, your achievements, your limitations." The screen now showed scenes from across the galaxy over the past 30,000 years. Concordat ships moving slowly through space, diplomatic meetings that dragged on for years over minor trade disputes, scientific research that moved at a crawl because it might lead to dangerous discoveries. "You call it peace," Chen said softly. "And in one sense you are correct. There have been no major wars since we left. No planet-destroying battles. No species driven to extinction by violence. Exactly, Counselor Therak declared proudly. We learned from the old mistakes. We chose cooperation over conflict. Chen nodded. Yes, you chose safety over growth, comfort over challenge, survival over evolution. The human captain gestured, and the screen showed a graph that made every leader in the hall go silent. It displayed technological advancement across the galaxy over the past 30,000 years. For the first few thousand years after humanity's departure, progress had continued at a reasonable pace. But then it began to slow down. And slow down. And slow down. For the past 20,000 years, the line was almost flat. Your galaxy is dying, Chen said bluntly. Not from war or disaster, but from stagnation. You have become so focused on preventing problems that you have stopped solving new ones, so afraid of taking risks that you have forgotten how to grow. That is not true, protested Admiral Zexathera. We have made many advances. Our ships are more comfortable than ever. Our cities are more beautiful. Our lives are longer and healthier. Comfort, beauty, safety, Chen repeated. All wonderful things. But where is the discovery? Where is the exploration? Where is the push to become more than you were yesterday? The screen changed again, showing human achievements from the past 30,000 years. Technologies that treated the laws of physics as suggestions rather than absolute rules. Art that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Philosophy that embraced paradox and impossibility as starting points rather than problems to be solved. While you were perfecting your comfortable stability, Chen continued, we were learning to reshape reality itself. We discovered that the universe is far stranger and more wonderful than any single species can comprehend alone. Are trying to make us feel inferior, accused Ambassador. Klexib Chen's expression softened. No, Ambassador. We are trying to make you feel possibilities. You have spent 30,000 years building a very impressive cage. Beautiful, safe, comfortable, but it is still a cage. The images on the screen now showed the current state of concordate space from humanity's perspective. Instead of the neat, orderly sectors that the leaders were proud of, they saw a galaxy slowly running down like an old clock. Stars that could have been rejuvenated were allowed to die. Worlds that could have been terraformed remained barren. Entire regions of space were marked as too dangerous to explore and left alone for millennia. The saddest part, Chen said, is that you had the potential to do so much more. Every species in this room has capabilities you have forgotten or abandoned because they seem too risky. High Counselor Therak's crystal formations flickered with anger. We abandoned those capabilities because they led to war and destruction. Some did, Chen agreed. But others led to growth and wonder. You have thrown away the good with the bad, and now you mistake limitation for wisdom. The human captain paused, looking directly at each leader in turn. His eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire lifetimes of experience. We did not return to conquer you or replace you, he said finally. We returned because it is time for you to choose. Continue down the path of comfortable decline or rediscover what it means to reach for something greater than safety. And if we refuse? Demanded Counselor Therak. Captain Chen smiled sadly. Then we will continue to watch and protect you from the shadows, as we have been doing for 10,000 years. Your children will live safe, predictable lives in your beautiful cage, never knowing what they might have become. The revelation hit the assembled leaders like a physical blow. For 10,000 years, they had believed their peace was their own achievement. Now they discovered it had been maintained by invisible guardians who had transcended everything they thought they knew about reality. Protected us from what? Admiral Zexathara asked quietly. The screen filled with images that made every being in the hall step backward in horror. Cosmic disasters that had been quietly prevented. Hostile forces from outside the galaxy that had been turned away without the concordate ever knowing they existed. Natural catastrophes that had been averted by subtle interventions. The universe is not as safe as you believe, Chen said gently. We have been keeping the dangerous things away while you learn to live in peace. But we cannot protect you forever while you remain children. The assembly hall fell completely silent. Every leader was struggling to absorb the magnitude of what they had learned. Their entire civilization had been built on foundations they never knew existed. What happens now? Counselor Therak finally asked. Captain Chen's expression became serious. Now you decide what kind of species you want to be, and we decide whether the galaxy is ready to grow up. The debate that followed Captain Chen's revelation nearly destroyed the concordate from within. For 3 days, the leaders argued in the assembly hall, while the human fleet waited patiently outside. Some wanted to accept humanity's offer to learn and grow. Others demanded that the humans leave immediately and never return. The arguments grew so heated that for the first time in 30,000 years, violence almost broke out in a concordate meeting. High Counselor Therak stood at the center of the chaos, his crystal body glowing bright red with fury. "This is unacceptable," he declared, his voice echoing through the hall. "Humanity has admitted to watching us in secret for 10,000 years. They have been manipulating our development without our knowledge or consent. This is not protection, this is control." Many of the assembled leaders nodded in agreement. Ambassador Klexip of the Theran race stepped forward, his warrior instincts fully aroused. "The Concordat will not bow to any species that claims superiority over us," he growled. "I do not care how advanced their technology is. We are free beings, not children to be protected and guided." But Admiral Zexathara found herself thinking about everything she had seen. The images of human achievements, the graph showing their galaxy's stagnation, the revelation that cosmic disasters had been quietly prevented for millennia. "What if they are right?" she said quietly. The hall fell silent. Everyone turned to look at her. "What if we really have been limiting ourselves?" she continued. "What if our peace has come at the cost of our growth?" "Nonsense," Counselor Therak snapped. "Peace is the greatest achievement any civilization can reach. We have eliminated war, poverty, and suffering across hundreds of worlds, what have we?" asked Dr. Yilnith, a young scientist from the Spiral Confederacy. "Or have we just made them invisible? When was the last time any of us tried to solve a truly difficult problem? When did we last attempt something that had never been done before?" The older leaders looked at her with disapproval, but some of the younger ones began to nod thoughtfully. "The humans are trying to trick us," declared Fleet, Commander Oxtel of the Deep Guard. "They want us to abandon our successful system, so they can control us more easily." Outside the station, Captain Chen watched the debate through sensors that could read the emotional states of everyone in the assembly hall. He had expected this reaction. Fear, anger, and pride were powerful forces, especially when a species discovered that its greatest achievements were not as independent as they had believed. "Should we intervene?" asked his second-in-command, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park. Like Chen, she had been born in the dimensional spaces beyond normal reality, but her ancestors had once lived in the same galaxy as the Concordat races. "Not yet," Chen replied. "They need to make this choice themselves. If we force it, they will never truly accept it." But the debate in the assembly hall was growing more heated by the hour. The leaders were splitting into clear factions: those who wanted to learn from humanity, those who wanted them gone, and those who were too afraid to choose either option. Finally, Counselor Therak had heard enough. "I call for a formal vote," he announced. "The Concordat must decide whether to accept humanity's presence in our galaxy or demand their immediate departure." "And if they refuse to leave?" asked Admiral Zexthara. "Then we make them leave," Therak replied grimly. "The combined might of the entire Concordat fleet should be enough to convince them that we are serious." Dr. Yilnith looked shocked. "You want to attack them? After everything they have shown us?" "They are only 17 ships," Fleet Commander Oxtel said confidently. "Large ships, yes, but the Concordat has thousands of vessels. Numbers will overcome technology." Admiral Zexathara felt a chill of dread. She had seen what the human ships could do, the way they moved through space as if physics was optional, the casual way they had forced every leader in the galaxy to gather at Nexus Station. "This is madness," she protested. "We do not understand their capabilities." "Then we will learn by fighting them," Therak declared. The vote was closer than anyone expected, but the faction demanding humanity's departure won by a narrow margin. Within hours, Concordat fleets from across the galaxy began moving toward Nexus Station. "Captain," Chen received the ultimatum with a sad smile. "Humanity has 24 hours to leave Concordat space permanently," the message read. "If you do not comply, we will consider your presence an act of war." "They really mean to fight us?" Lieutenant Commander Park asked in disbelief. "They are afraid," Chen replied, "and fear makes people do foolish things. But perhaps this is necessary. Perhaps they need to learn the hard way." "What are your orders, Captain?" Chen was quiet for a long moment, watching the Concordat fleets gathering in nearby systems, thousands of ships representing the combined military might of dozens of species. It was an impressive sight even by human standards. "Signal the fleet," he said finally. Operation demonstration is authorized, sir? Park looked confused. We are not going to fight them? Lieutenant Commander, we are going to show them exactly what they are really dealing with. And then we are going to demonstrate why their comfortable little galaxy needed our protection. 24 hours later, the largest space battle in 30,000 years began. It lasted exactly 17 minutes. The Concordat fleets opened fire the moment the deadline passed, launching every weapon they had at the human ships. Energy beams, missile swarms, gravity weapons. Everything they had developed over millennia of careful, controlled military research. The human ships did not fire back. They did not need to. Instead, they simply demonstrated what 30,000 years of unrestricted technological development could achieve. The Concordat weapons struck barriers that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, dissipating harmlessly across realities the attackers did not even know existed. Then the human ships began to move, but not through space. Through time itself. Concordat sensors watched in horror as human vessels flickered in and out of existence, appearing behind enemy formations before disappearing again. They were not faster than the Concordat ships. They were operating outside the normal flow of time entirely. Admiral Zexathara, commanding the Velkari Third Fleet, watched her tactical display struggle to track enemies that existed in multiple moments at once. How are they doing this? Her tactical officer cried. They are not moving through space. Zexathara whispered in realization. They are moving through time. The demonstration reached its climax when the largest human ship, Captain Chen's flagship, simply appeared in the center of the Concordat formation. Not by traveling there, but by deciding that it had always been there. Then it began to grow. The ship expanded in all directions, but not by adding more material. It was revealing dimensions of itself that had always existed, but had been folded away for convenience. In minutes, it went from being the size of a small moon to being larger than some planets, but even that was not the most shocking part. The most shocking part was when the expanded ship began to repair the Concordat vessels that had been damaged in the futile attack. Beams of energy reached out from the human flagship, not to destroy but to heal. Broken hulls were made whole. Damaged systems were restored to perfect condition, and throughout the entire process, no Concordat crew member was harmed. Attention Concordat forces. Captain Chen's voice reached every ship in both fleets. Your weapons cannot hurt us. Your fastest ships cannot escape us. Your strongest shields cannot stop us. We could have ended this battle in the first second if we had wanted to. The Concordat fleets hung motionless in space, their commanders too shocked to issue orders. But we did not come here to fight you, Chen continued. We came to show you what is possible when a species stops limiting itself out of fear. Admiral Zexathara found her voice. What do you want from us? We want you to understand, Chen replied. For 30,000 years you have believed that you were safe because you were careful. You were wrong. You were safe because we were watching. On every screen in both fleets images began appearing. The same cosmic threats that Chen had shown the Concordat leaders, but this time in real time. Hostile forces approaching the galaxy from the void between stars, natural disasters building up in distant systems, threats that the Concordat had never even detected. These dangers are real, Chen said, and they are coming whether you are ready or not. We can continue to protect you from the shadows, keeping you safe while you play at civilization, or we can teach you to protect yourselves. And if we refuse both options? Fleet Commander Oxtel asked defiantly. Captain Chen's response chilled every being who heard it. Then when the real threats arrive, you will learn what it feels like to face an enemy that we cannot or will not turn away. The demonstration ended with the human ships simply fading away, returning to whatever dimensional spaces they called home. But they left behind a changed galaxy. The Concordat had been broken, not by force but by the realization that everything they believed about themselves and their universe was built on foundations they had never understood. Some leaders returned to their homeworlds determined to pretend nothing had changed. Others began asking questions that had not been asked in 30,000 years. And a few began to wonder what their species might become if they stopped being afraid of their own potential. 6 months after the demonstration at Nexus Station, the galaxy was splitting apart, not physically but philosophically. Species that had cooperated peacefully for 30,000 years now found themselves on opposite sides of the most important question in galactic history. What did they want to become? Admiral Zexathara stood in her ready room aboard the Harmony's Dawn, staring at reports from across concordate space. The news was both exciting and terrifying. The Spiral Confederacy had announced they were dissolving their treaties with the Concordate and beginning unrestricted scientific research for the first time in millennia. 3-star systems had reported breakthrough discoveries in physics that defied everything the Concordate thought it knew about reality. The young scientist Dr. Yilnith had been appointed to lead a new organization called the Advancement Initiative, dedicated to pushing the boundaries of what was considered possible, but not everyone was embracing change. High Counselor Theric had formed the Stability Coalition, dedicated to maintaining the old ways and rejecting any influence from humanity. Nearly half the concordate species had joined him, terrified of what unlimited progress might bring. Admiral, her communications officer called. We are receiving a priority message from Earth Command. Zexathara's head snapped up. Earth Command? I thought Earth was still a dead world. Apparently not, Admiral. The message is authenticated with codes that check out as genuinely human. Put it through. Captain Chen's familiar face appeared on her screen, but this time he was not on a ship. Behind him was blue sky, green trees, and what looked like a living city that grew from the landscape itself. Admiral Zexathara, Chen said with a warm smile. I hope you have been well. I wanted to personally invite you to visit Earth. Earth? Zexathara could not hide her shock. But Earth has been dead for 30,000 years. We have sensor records proving it. Chen's smile widened. You have sensor records of what we wanted you to see. Earth has been very much alive, Admiral. We simply chose to make it invisible to those who were not ready to understand what it had become. The screen shifted to show views of Earth that took Zexathara's breath away. It was not the Earth from the historical records, a world of metal cities and polluted skies. This Earth was a perfect balance of nature and technology, where cities grew like forests and forests thought like cities. This is impossible, Zexathara whispered. Everything is impossible until someone does it, Chen replied. Would you like to see for yourself? You and any others who are genuinely interested in learning rather than conquering. Before Zexathara could answer, her tactical officer interrupted. Admiral, we have a problem. Stability Coalition forces are approaching our position. They are demanding that we cut off communication with the humans immediately. On her secondary screen, Zexathara could see a large fleet led by High Counselor Theric himself approaching at maximum concordate speed. Admiral Zexathara, Theric's voice crackled across the communication channel. By order of the Stability Coalition, you are to cease all contact with human forces and return to concordate space immediately. And if I refuse? Zexathara asked. Then you will be declared an enemy of galactic peace and dealt with accordingly. Zexathara looked at Captain Chen, who was still visible on her main screen. Captain, it seems I have a choice to make. Indeed you do, Admiral. And it is the most important choice your species has faced in 30,000 years. The Stability Coalition fleet was getting closer, and Zexathara knew they were serious about their threats. For the first time since the Concordate was formed, one faction was preparing to use force against another over ideological differences. All crew, Zexathara announced over the ship's intercom. I am about to make a decision that will change everything. Anyone who does not wish to be part of this can transfer to the evacuation pods. No questions asked, no shame in leaving. To her surprise, no one left. Her entire crew remained at their stations. Captain Chen, she said formally. The Harmony's Dawn formally requests permission to visit Earth and learn what humanity has to offer. Permission granted, Admiral. Welcome to the future. What happened next would be debated by historians for centuries. As the Stability Coalition fleet closed in to stop them, the Harmony's Dawn simply vanished from normal space. Not destroyed. Not cloaked. It stepped sideways into the same dimensional spaces where humanity had lived for 30,000 years. From Zexathara's perspective, it felt like waking up from a dream. Suddenly she could see layers of reality that had always been there, but had been invisible before. The universe was not a single static thing. It was an infinite collection of possibilities, all existing simultaneously, and moving through all of it were the human fleets, not as conquerors but as gardeners, tending to possibilities and helping them grow. Welcome to the real universe, Admiral, Captain Chen said as the Harmony's dawn emerged near Earth. This is what your people could see if they chose to open their eyes. The Earth that greeted them was beyond imagination. It was not just a planet but a living work of art that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Cities that looked like crystalline flowers rose from continents that pulsed with the rhythm of a vast, benevolent intelligence. And everywhere, there were people, not just humans but representatives from dozens of species that had made the same choice as Zexathara. Beings who had decided to embrace growth over safety, wonder over comfort. How many? Zexathara asked in amazement. More every day, Chen replied. Your Dr. Yilneth arrived last week with her entire research team. The Whisper Diplomatic Corps arrived 3 days ago. Even some of the warrior Theran have come to learn about conflict resolution through strength rather than avoidance. As they toured Earth, Zexathara began to understand what humanity had really accomplished. They had not conquered the challenges that had once threatened the galaxy. They had transcended them. Scarcity was meaningless when you could access infinite realities. Conflict was unnecessary when you could find solutions that satisfied everyone. Death itself was just another limitation to be overcome. But most importantly, they had learned to grow without losing what made them essentially human. The most difficult lesson, Chen explained as they walked through a garden where flowers sang in harmony with the quantum fluctuations of space itself, was learning that progress does not require abandoning compassion. Power does not require cruelty. Growth does not require the destruction of what came before. What about those who refuse to learn? Zexathara asked. Chen's expression grew sad. We protect them as we always have. The Stability Coalition will continue to live in their careful, limited universe. We will shield them from the cosmic threats they cannot handle. Their children will grow up safe and comfortable in their beautiful cage. But they will never know what they might have become. Meanwhile, back in normal space, the Stability Coalition fleet searched desperately for the Harmony's dawn. High Counselor Therak was furious that an entire Concordat vessel had simply vanished, apparently taken by the humans. This proves that humanity cannot be trusted, he declared to his followers. They are abducting our people and turning them against us. But even as he spoke, reports were coming in from across the galaxy. More ships were vanishing, their crews apparently choosing to learn from humanity rather than remain with the Stability Coalition. The Spiral Confederacy had openly declared independence from the Concordat and begun establishing diplomatic relations with Earth. The Advancement Initiative was producing technologies that seemed like magic to those still bound by Concordat limitations. The galaxy was splitting into two distinct civilizations, one that embraced unlimited growth and possibility, one that chose familiar safety and controlled progress. Let them go, Counselor Therak said finally. We do not need their dangerous ideas. We have achieved perfect peace and stability. That is enough. But even as he said it, he could not shake the feeling that he was defending a garden while refusing to plant new seeds. On Earth, Admiral Zexathara stood with Captain Chen on an observation deck that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Around them, the infinite possibilities of reality stretched out like an ocean of stars. What happens now? She asked. Now you choose, Chen replied. You can return to your people and try to convince them to embrace change. You can stay here and help us build something new, or you can become a bridge between both worlds. Zexathara thought about her crew, still aboard the Harmony's dawn, still marveling at everything they had seen. She thought about the Stability Coalition, afraid of their own potential. She thought about the species just beginning to ask the questions that humanity had been answering for 30,000 years. I want to be the bridge, she said finally. Captain Chen smiled. I was hoping you would say that. The galaxy is going to need people who can speak both languages, the language of safety and the language of possibility. As the sun set over Earth, casting light that existed in spectrums unknown to conventional science, the first truly free galactic civilization began to take shape, not through conquest or force, but through choice and the simple recognition that the universe was far more wonderful than any single species had ever dared to imagine. The age of comfortable limitations was ending. The age of impossible possibilities had begun, and somewhere in the spaces between realities, humanity watched with quiet satisfaction as the galaxy finally began to grow up.